The average American worker is going to have about 12 jobs in their life. My expert opinion leads me to believe they're going to like about half of them, get health insurance from some of them, and suffer through, clip art filled PowerPoints at all of them. So far, I've had so many jobs in my life, and they've each shaped me in various ways. I was a tea sample giver outer at grocery stores, a teen bank teller, like I couldn't even really see over the marble teller pod. What do you call that? It's a counter. Oh, God. I was a phone operator at an erectile dysfunction clinic, which was, yes, a real job for money, not just for comedy. And my longest job to date was as a correspondent on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart from 2003 to 2015. Frankly, people in the industry like to say that I'm the longest serving correspondent in the show's history, which is nice because it makes me feel both accomplished and old. Great. Leaving The Daily Show was such a complicated career decision. It obviously had been my dream job. It paved the way for me to relocate to New York, where I was raising a family with my husband, who also happened to work with me at The Daily Show. But, part of having a job, even a job that you love, means at some point, you're probably going to have to leave that job. Things are different now. And we both started getting that feeling after we'd hit the decade mark at The Daily Show. Like nothing about the job had particularly changed, but we had changed. We had been there a long time. We were very experienced. We were busy doing other stuff, and we felt organically that we needed to make a change. So when it was announced there was going to be a regime change at the show, we knew that it was our time to move on, no matter what. It was just, we were going to move on. But just because the timing was exactly right didn't mean it was an easy decision, because even when you love something, you can outgrow it. And it was our time to be challenged, I guess, by something new. My something new was my own show, Full Frontal on TBS, which really was a startup compared to the show that I was leaving. Like, I knew that it wouldn't have as many viewers or social media followers or Emmys in its back pocket, but at least it would be mine for however long it lasted. It would be full of my decisions, some very good decisions and some very bad decisions, but it was all mine. And after 47 years, I was ready to be in charge. And as soon as that show began, I knew that at some point I would leave that show as well. I mean, that is just how the cookie crumbles. Like in my next job, I'm definitely going to be a baker. And because the average worker is let go from some of those 12 jobs, my decision to leave Full Frontal was actually made for me. Turns out sometimes the biggest decisions like that are made by someone else. Unlike my decision to leave the erectile dysfunction clinic, that choice, like our patients, was not hard. I'm sorry. This is Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee. My guest today knows firsthand how important it can be to leave a job you love when it is time to go. Alyssa Mastromonaco is a former Deputy Chief of Staff to President Obama and current co-host of Hysteria on Crooked Media. She's also the author of 2 books, Who Thought This Was a Good Idea, and other questions you should have answers to when you work in the White House. And, so here's the thing, notes on growing up, getting older, and trusting your gut. Most importantly, she makes delicious jam. So take a listen and make good choices. Hello, how are you today?
Sam, it is a great day because I am with you.
I feel the exact same way. I don't even know where to start with you. There's so much that we need to talk about. But primarily, there is one thing that we do need to talk about, and that is cats.
All the cats, the furry cats, the rescue cats, the messed up cats,
Yes.
the cats with no teeth.
Do you want to just do a cat-related podcast?
Listen, I did a whole Instagram story about my cat Winky's adoptiversary today, and I made her a cake.
What?
You knew I had to.
That is true. Well, okay, we got a cat during the pandemic and we named her Susan Collins because we always wanted to laugh. Yeah, because we always wanted to laugh every time we said her name. And we do.
That's hilarious.
Every time. But she was born without a tail. So she's large and fluffy, but terribly uncoordinated, and she hangs from the screens. Okay, Choice Words is now, it's just a cat podcast.
It's a cat podcast, and people will still love it.
Everybody wants that.
They do.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're going to talk about choices because we know that this podcast is about choices, or that's our entry point.
Choices.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We have so many.
There are so many. And you have specific ones that I've heard you speak about that I want to talk about.
We'll get into it.
We're going to get into it. But first I want to ask you just very generally.
Okay.
Are you good at making decisions for yourself? Are you good at making choices? What is your path?
I'm very good at making choices for myself.
You've worked in high pressure situations.
I have. I'm not going to say I haven't made some bad choices.
Of course.
I have.
Yep.
I mean, we've all made some bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think I am blessed with, and I don't know if it's the fact that I was born with IBS or what, but I have a real gut. You know what I mean? My gut talks to me and tells me, it's like, Alyssa, this is right or wrong. And the only time my gut has wavered isn't even when my gut wavered. It's when my brain tried to intercede.
Really? When did that, can you give me an example of when that would have happened?
Of course.
Yeah.
So I was not even 35 years old. I was just about to turn 35. And President Barack Obama wanted to make me White House Deputy Chief of Staff.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, come on, Sam.
Come on.
What the fuck? But the thing is, it was a huge job.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so I actually went to the president and was like, I have some other people for you to consider. And he's like, what on earth are you talking about? And I then went to the senior counselor in the White House at the time, Pete Rouse, who had been my mentor for years and years. I said, Pete, look, I just told POTUS. I told him, I think, that this person would be better than me. And he said, God damn it, Alyssa, you are the only person who thinks you can't do this job. And you know what? If I am being honest, I was great at the job. But at the time, I was just like, there was a certain amount of ageism. People always ask me, was the White House sexist? And it's like, no, it actually to me felt more ageist. That I was so worried. Here was our first Black president. Did you want to be the one who fucked shit up? Did you want to be the person who he had faith in and then you let him down? And so that was the one time I was like, in my gut, I think I knew I would do a good job. But in my head, I was like, you're too young.
So you were trying to convince yourself that you couldn't do it, you shouldn't do it.
That I shouldn't do it.
That you shouldn't do it. But you woke up, and were you waking up in the night going, I really should. I can't pass this down. What did that turmoil feel like?
It felt so luckily I had some good friends like Dan Pfeiffer who were like, buddy, what are you doing here? What are you even thinking about?
Right.
Actually, I think he's the one who put it to me best. He's like, whoever you're putting forward for this job is just going to ultimately come back to you and ask questions. You're the one who knows how all this stuff works.
Right.
And so you're being ridiculous.
Right.
And ultimately I was like, you know what? I just had to go into my dark place where I was like, you know what? I would be really fucking mad if someone came and was asking me questions for a job that I could have had and then I turned down. But it was also the stuff that I kind of had known about myself, that I'm actually a very creative person, which is what makes me good at operational things, because I think I can think creatively about solutions.
Right.
And so I was like, Alyssa, what are you going to do? But that was the one time I almost derailed myself.
You almost derailed yourself. I'm so glad that you didn't.
You know what? I'm glad I didn't too.
How long did you wrestle with this? This is a biggie.
Oh,
of smallies and biggies. This is a biggie.
In my brain, it felt like months. In reality, I mean, things in the White House move so quickly. In reality, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks.
Well, how did you decide to join a young Barack Obama senatorial campaign? What made you take a gamble on a candidate like Barack Obama? Was it just...
So, what's funny, Sam, is that when I was in college, I was at the University of Vermont, and this, college back then, I don't know what it's like now. I just know what I see on Bama Rush TikTok, and I'm like, this is very removed from my experience. But
you didn't have the Bama Rush experience at the University of Vermont?
I
Okay.
did not. I did not. What I did have was a socialist who, by the way, I think was roughly the same age I am now, coming to my dorm to talk about voting, and his name was Bernie Sanders. And I was not in the let's do politics thing,
Yeah.
but I could not get enough of him in a state like Vermont, which I think a lot of people don't understand is actually quite a poor state, or at least it is now, but it really was back then. I couldn't believe what he could get done for people in a week. I ended up being an intern. I was an intern in Vermont. I was an intern in DC.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I saw Barack Obama, when I met him for the first time, which was in like December of 2004, it was the first time I felt like there was someone as in tune to what people needed as Bernie Sanders was. And so
Wow.
I said, you know what? And I had just come off the Kerry campaign, the John Kerry for President campaign. I was devastated. We lost. And
Yeah.
Sam, I was like, listen, junior senator from Illinois, Barack Hussein Obama, never going to run for president. I'll never be disappointed and brokenhearted again. And that's actually why I felt like I thought it would be such an adventure to work with someone who would rather, unlike so many politicians in Washington, D.C., who will poll test and focus group everything that they're going to say, he didn't care. I mean, he's like, I'd rather lose being me than win being poll tested and being fed words to speak.
I feel that I have to close my eyes and do a meditation as you say those words, because I feel that is so rare. That is
I know.
So increasingly rare.
Listen, when we decided, there was a small group of us who helped him decide whether to run for president. And it was the reason I picked up and moved to Chicago. Because I'm like, first of all, we were all like, we'll be here for 6 months.
Right.
But we're like, come on, he's running against Hillary. Like, we're going to be fine. We'll be home in our DC apartments in no time. But it really was that, like, leave it all on the field type vibes. Like, we're just going to be ourselves. And he accepted us entirely as we were. And we just gave him 100%.
There's something about the human brain that just can sniff out inauthenticity so quickly. And when like when you know that someone is speaking just from the heart or extemporaneously, or that these are just their true values and they can just pour out so effortlessly, it's so relaxing to the brain.
It is. You know who's like that? You just had her on your podcast, Big Gretch over in Michigan.
Gretchen
I love her.
Whitmer.
Big Gretch.
Oh, I love the Gretch. Big Gretch. Yeah. She does that too. She unspooled, having a conversation with her, I felt unspooled my brain.
Yeah. She gets it. She totally gets it.
We'll be right back with Alyssa Mastromonaco after this. Now, okay, well, let's talk about your decision to leave the White House.
Sure.
That's interesting, too, because it's really hard to leave a job that's
oh my God.
incredibly prestigious.
I
assume unbelievably rewarding, but sometimes you literally have to. I mean, what was that like?
So going into the 2012 election, our reelect was unbelievably stressful.
Yeah.
We had a real race against Mitt Romney, and Hurricane Sandy happened. And that was I was in charge of response and recovery to natural disasters. I coordinated the interagency. You remember how bad that was.
Oh, it was so bad.
I was sleeping 2 hours a night. Sam, the president said to me, you're either going to be a hero or I'm going to have to fire you, because there was going to be no in between.
Right.
Either I was going to, and there are people from the campaign, because I was obviously in the White House, people from the campaign who would be like, Alyssa, you can't fuck this up. And it's you can die. like, thank you so much for that information.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't realize the stakes were high. Thank you.
But you realize that you have really sort of garnered people's attention when the Treasury Secretary and DHS, they're all sitting in the office and they're like, okay, Alyssa, tell us what to do.
Right.
I was 10 o'clock at night disbanding treaties from the 1800s so that ships could get into New York Harbor and bring us gasoline. I could go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we got to the inauguration in January of 13, which I also sort of oversaw, I had no gas in the tank. I was totally done.
Right.
And I said to the president, look, I am no good if I'm not giving you 150%. Like, that's what you need. I think it's time for me to go. And he was like, listen, take a vacation. You need to recharge. And I was like, okay. And Sam, the vacation never happened.
Yeah.
But when you're in the White House, it's like you end up in the middle of like the biggest things. And you're like, I can't leave now. Like there are people, I'm not going to name names. There are people who have occupied the White House who I don't think were really waking up every morning being like, things depend on me, you know? Like,
I'm having a trauma response right now.
Yes. And we all deeply felt that, right? And so finally, there came a point when I was in my office. I was having a conversation with David Plouffe, who had been our campaign manager. At this point, he was senior advisor. And he looks at my computer and he's like, you're not typing, because I was a real multitasker. I could type and talk to someone at the same time.
Right.
He's like, you're not typing any words. And I looked at the computer and I was like, oh my God. And I had been like forgetting my keys and all this kind of stuff. And I just burst. He left my office. I burst into tears. The way my office was set up, my wall, one of my walls didn't go all the way to the top. So my assistant could hear everything that was happening.
Okay.
And he comes in and he's like, Alyssa, I called you. I've got you an appointment down at the medical unit. Like, it's okay. And so they did a couple tests on me. And it turned out that I was exceedingly sleep deprived.
Oh, okay.
Exceedingly. And so ultimately, I just decided that I was not, I'd given all I had to give. You know, it had been
Right.
almost 10 years and it was time. I helped, you know, I think that if you're in an organization and you're managing something, we always kind of operated in the like get hit by a bus theory.
Right.
You know, if you got hit by a bus, everything should go on without you. You're not a hero if everything falls apart. It doesn't mean that you were very special. It means you were a very bad manager.
Right.
And so I decided to leave in May of 2014. And Sam, if I thought the idea of getting ready to leave, like when you leave, there's this whole process, right? You get read out, in air quotes, read out of your security clearance. So the Office of Security comes in and they read me out. They go to take your badge, right? And I just burst into tears.
Yes.
And I'm like, I bet this happens all the time. And they were like, actually, no. I was like, really?
They're like, we don't know what to do with a crying person.
They did not know what to do with me. And I like busied myself. You know, my friend Dan Pfeiffer was taking my office and I like set it up for him because I'm like, this is going to make me feel okay. And when I went out to drive, I mean, Sam, it was like my last trip with the president. All the Secret Service guys sort of reported to me. And, you know, on TV shows, you always hear them talking over the radios. And I was like, can I do that for my last car ride? And they were like, yeah, of course. And so the president's code name was Renegade. And when you'd arrive at the White House, they'd say Renegade arrives. And they let me say Renegade arrives. And then in like the most cinematic, I get in my red Ford Escape, covered in stickers.
Yeah.
And I drive out onto Pennsylvania Avenue through the iron gates, right? Like, and all the tourists and all the Secret Service agents are clapping. It was like some Rudy level shit, you know? And then I just sobbed for days. I mean, I really did. And then on Tuesday, I started my career of watching HGTV all day.
I can't believe that. That is so, that must be, because I kind of like remember when you're in a flurry of activity and then everything goes quiet. It's like being on a beach and listening to a seashell.
Yeah.
But it is very hard to make that transition from high adrenaline and like
that's it.
Cortisol spikes all the time to like.
They actually think, one of the doctors told me, they think by the time I left, I had something, I don't know if it's real or something they made up to make me feel good, that I had like adrenaline toxicity, that I'd been running on it for so long that I just kind of went off a cliff. And, you know, David Axelrod, who I know you know, after I wrote about this in my book, he was like, Alyssa, I wish we had talked about this. Like, I wish because the same thing kind of happened to him. That you just really, because you think, Sam, you think when you leave that the next day they're going to call you and be like, girl, we miss you so much. Can you tell us X, Y, and Z? But the phone doesn't ring. If you did your job right, the phone does not ring. And so it was a really tough time.
How in the world, and you know, our former president accepted that he does not belong in this category. How does any president literally endure the experience of being president? Like, you have to be a bit of a psycho, right? Like, you have to.
I think you either have to have really incredible perspective, which I think President Obama did have, that
Right.
he understood you take everything piece by piece. There are the fights you're going to fight. There are the fights that are not worth fighting.
Right.
But I mean, it is like nonstop. Like, you come in.
Yeah.
Sam, one morning I wake up and as deputy chief, I had this like apparatus in my very tiny bedroom that was a secure phone, a secure computer. It made my bedroom so hot, and I run hot, so it was like very hard for me.
Right.
And it's like, you wake up in the middle of the night and the situation room is on the phone and they're like, ma'am, there's a nuclear meltdown in Fukushima. And I was like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
There is not, and just when you think something else is happening, something else is going to happen, because it's America. It's the world.
It's the world.
Everything is happening all the time.
How long did it take for you before you were ready to do more work? Like, at what point did you start writing your book? Like, how long did it take before you were able to get the gears going again?
You know, as I was leaving the White House, I did an hour-long interview on Charlie Rose. And Hachette actually reached out to me. And the story, as I remember, was the niece of the woman who was the president of 12, the imprint under Hachette at the time. She said to her aunt, I want to hear more people like her. And they reached out to me. And I think that I had my book deal by like June, and I started writing it. Yeah. And of course, because again, type A. I start writing it, and it was bad. It was so bad because you know what? I was trying to sound not important, but I was trying to sound serious.
Right.
And you can be like like I had a good, important job. It doesn't mean I have to sound any different than the way I sound when I'm talking to you right now.
Right.
And that's what it took me, I'd say almost a year, to really understand that if anybody was ever going to read my book, they were only going to read it if I sounded like me. So that took a long time.
Right. Right. And how long did it take you to write the book?
2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
About 2 years.
How many versions of it did you throw out?
Two full versions where I was like, oh my God, who is this? You know what, Sam? It's like what we were just talking about. The first version sounded utterly inauthentic.
Right.
I was like, who is this person? I was like, no. And so luckily Hachette was into sort of this like youngish at the time woman who had done big things, but was kind of a hot mess from a small town,
Right. Everybody just wants to hear the real goods. They
do.
I have read that you say that every component of a good decision is contingent on your ability to take care of yourself, but it doesn't sound like you were super taking care of yourself, or...
Well, at the time, I thought I was.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Now I do much more so since I have left. At the time, I thought that going to Pilates at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday was ideal. Now, the truth is, I had back problems at the time, and so it did help me.
Okay.
I always made sure I was home to watch, like Girls on Sunday night and Veep. There were certain things that I looked forward to throughout the week that I was like, I'm going to do this.
That is true. You have to draw lines for yourself, and you cannot cross those things.
No.
And that's, in a way, I do think that we kind of like overuse the concept of self-care.
Yeah.
It's important, but also it's not the most important thing. But maybe drawing lines for yourself is the most important thing.
I think there's like real self-care, and then there's Instagram self-care. And Instagram self-care is not my cup of tea, but
very different.
Understanding when I am exhausted or overtaxed and don't have the bandwidth to be around other people, to me, is the best thing I can do for myself.
I like that you mentioned Girls, because I
love that show.
I love Girls so fucking much. And I feel like it's really worth a rewatch. I rewatched the whole thing during the pandemic. I was like,
did I.
I gotta get back into this show. It's beautiful.
I think back when we were in the White House, Girls was on, and then Veep was on right after. And we would come in the next morning. It'd be hilarious. We'd see Joe Biden, who at that point was vice president, and be like, were you on the phone with JLD? Were you talking to Julie Louis? Because that episode hit close to home. You know, it was, those were the things I think that we all kind of looked forward to. They were our appointment viewing, and we would all talk about it on Monday morning.
Want to listen to the rest of this episode? Head over to your favorite podcast player to hear the entire show. I highly recommend it.